Cullen goes live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello there, hello. Oops, I have to tend my voice with great care today. It's a little iffy. My brain probably falls into that category too, so beforehand I am begging your indulgence, lest I become or appear incoherent. I will try to dispense with my usual lament that the news is so depressing I don't want to talk about it, but I guess that just sort of goes without saying. First, let's start with this astonishing murder case here in Pittsburgh. The two researchers that had just moved here from Boston, the wife ending up dead, Autumn Klein, chief of the Division of Women's Neurology at UPMC, and her husband now arrested. And he, too, a researcher. I'm not sure if he's a researcher in neuroscience, too. What's astonishing about this, what's astonishing about it, is that one figures that someone like Dr. Ferrante, the man now arrested and accused of the murder of his wife, would have to be a man of smarts, right? I mean, you don't get to be a brain scientist or whatever he is. He has a PhD, blah, blah, blah. They were at Harvard, and then came to Pitt. So you know that, like, his IQ is high. But what that shows is the reality that there are many different kinds of intelligence, because the way he went about, allegedly, the murder of his wife is so stupid that, I mean, a 4-year-old would have done better. If, as you read the affidavit of probable cause that the district attorney's office put out, he made no efforts whatsoever. He orders cyanide, even though he's not using it in any of his research. He tells the guy that he's ordering the cyanide from to use a different credit card than you usually do, and I want it ASAP, like tomorrow. And the cyanide arrives, and 1 week later, his wife is dead from cyanide poisoning. Just that. Even the nurse in the ER says that he was talking about his wife in the past tense before she had died, when the docs were still trying mightily, I suspect, to revive her. He left when the ambulance guys came. He left evidence all over the place. There is a reason from behavior and from texts to and from his wife to see he was urging her to drink this concoction that he had made as a fertility drug for her to get pregnant. How she was considering divorce, how he was jealous and thinking she was having an affair. All this laid out. It's just, I'm sorry. It's one of those times when you become, it seems silly, this journalistic standard of having to say, alleged. And then you wonder, it'll be interesting to see how his attorney spins this case. How do these defense attorneys how do they figure out how to take a case which is just so obviously indicative of the guilt of their client, and they just blithely go on and concoct some whole thing, which they argue with great ferocity, and I guess that's what they're charged to do, but unbelievable. All right, so doctor on doctor crime. You know, it boils down to, if you read between the lines, it boils down to the classic domestic kind of thing. The totally, clearly controlling, irrationally jealous husband wanting to, when she's away at a conference, saying, I'm coming out there. Who are you seeing out? I mean, it's just classic crazed, insecure male stuff that leads to violence and death of so many women. It's just so weird to see it play out with these two characters because, again, it's our sense that, well, this guy would be too smart. I mean, actually he's smart enough to do something much more clever. It shows that whatever was going on with him emotionally so trumped his capacity for rational thought. I don't know. Good God in heaven. Stupid. Stupid, 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 stupid. Well, half of Masters and I guess now all of Masters and Johnson is dead, right? Masters died. You know, the sex researchers. Movies have been made about them. But listen, you know what? I was reading her obit, the distaff side, Virginia Johnson, who died in St. Louis this week. I was struck by how lives unfold, how our lives unfold, and how they don't, rarely it seems, do they follow this sort of, okay, you graduate from high school, then you do this, then you do that, and you know, this very linear route. I know mine didn't. And when we're young, we assume, I think, that our lives will play out in some, you know, we are taking active steps to ensure I go to high school, and then I go to college, and then I intend to pursue this. And then life intercedes. So you look at somebody like Virginia Johnson, born Mary Virginia Eshelman in Springfield, Missouri, in 1925. And you look at what a girl then would have maybe assumed about the trajectory of her life. And this woman's life is testament to the fact that you can't make it up. This is why I love obits. She's very interesting. She was an accomplished pianist and a mezzo-soprano. But then we hear that she made money doing country western songs. Now that veers for me off of mezzo-soprano. Performing country music under the name Virginia Gibson, and she did it on radio in Springfield, Missouri, back in the day. She went to college, didn't graduate. She went to the Kansas City Conservatory of Music to follow up her music studies. And then the next thing you hear about her is she is a business writer for the St. Louis Daily Record, a newspaper. So, and she's still very young. So you go from this, musically talented, classically trained, country music singing business reporter. And look at the marital side. When she was very young, no one's talking about how young, she married a politician in Missouri. That marriage lasted 2 days. That was her first marriage. Then she married a lawyer who was much, 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 much older than her. That marriage, I don't know how long it went, but it didn't go long and it didn't last. Then she married, now we get up to 1950. So in 1950, she's 25 years old. She's already twice divorced. And she marries a third time. This time she's back to the sort of musical stuff because she marries a band leader, George Johnson. That marriage really lasts 6 whole years because that's as long as she's gone before. And in fact, begets 2 children. So before the age of 30, she's had all these career changes. She's been married 3 times, politician, lawyer, band leader, and she's been a country western singer and a business reporter and a mother of 2 children. She lands a job with this researcher. And of course, the rest is history. She never graduated from college, and yet she helped change the science of sexuality. It's fascinating. And of course, she married Masters. That would be number 4. And that one lasted longer than any, but also ended in divorce, amicable. This is how life goes. And it's hard to explain that to somebody whose life is still young and unraveling. Unraveling? No. Unraveling sounds bad. Is unfolding. I was once asked by some journalism students, how did you get to become a television reporter? And I said if I were to tell you my story, it's not anything you could replicate because it wouldn't be, if AAA gave out little triptychs and maps of how you get from here to a TV reporter job, it wouldn't read anything like my biography. So it's hard to describe how life just sort of happens. And when I read obituaries, I'm reminded of it. The other thing that occurred to me today when I was hanging out in the obituary column pages is that when you open the newspaper to the obituaries, besides the sea of, just print, there are pictures, right, interspersed. And invariably the pictures are pictures of smiling people. And today, for some reason, it struck me as so odd that these people are all smiling, and I wanted to scream at them, "You're dead!" I mean, you're dead. There's some kind of cognitive dissonance. I mean, if you're in the obituary section, why are you smiling? I would think you wouldn't be too happy about landing there. And yet, of course, that it's how you present yourself toward the end. There's something sad about the fact that for most people, they'll never have their picture in the paper until they die. And I guess if you have only one shot, you would want it to be smiling. Just looking out at this perfect blue sky. Is this not the perfect weather? Perfect? Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, I knew this would happen. Anthony Weiner, excuse me. The attempt by the right wing to take the Anthony Weiner story and attach it to Hillary Clinton. I knew this would happen, and here it is, and of course it's in the Wall Street Journal today. Now, of course, there is a connection between the Wieners and the Clintons. And that connection is that Huma? Is that how it's pronounced? I don't know how to pronounce her name. Huma?
I'm not sure. I've never
Abaddon?
seen it.
Okay. Huma, H-U-M-A. Weiner's wife is, and here again, it's like the neurosurgeon, this doctor, idiot murderer. It's, how can somebody be so brilliant, and apparently she is brilliant enough to, at a young age, have been Hillary Clinton's Secretary of State's, like, right-hand woman. Really known for her great, advice, her incredible, razor-sharp mind. And then you see her as a human being sticking with this jerk. It's so bizarre. But so there is the Hillary and Huma connection. And the other connection, of course, is that they're both married to men who have difficulty keeping it in their pants. So you don't have to stretch to do what was in the Journal today. And what it is a pretend email chat between Hillary and Huma. And it's titled, "If Huma and Hillary Were Emailing." And so the author has made up this whole thing about Hillary giving her advice about how to handle this, and pulling the Wiener is not something I wanted to say, pulling the whole Wiener thing into Hillary and 2016. And it's all right here. It didn't take long. We knew it would happen. The other thing I want to point out is it is written by a Pittsburgher, a young woman named Barry Weiss, who is now the associate editorial features editor at the Wall Street Journal. And she is from the same family. She is the sister of the other Weiss who created a firestorm not too long ago in the Wall Street Journal op-ed page by writing her plaint about how she didn't get into the college she wanted to. You might recall that. And she ends up on the Today Show the next day. They're sisters. they're both funny, and this is meant to be funny, and they come from a very funny, wonderful family here. But their dad is as right-wing as they come, and they clearly have taken their politics from him. So Hillary's going to get, this is going to, believe me, it'll be used again her. It will be used again her. And if you read that in the Wall Street Journal today, you will see how. And so this is to the delight of those intent on taking Hillary Clinton down. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, you can talk about something if you'd like to. Otherwise, as you know, I'm more than capable of jabbering away for the rest of the hour. So, back in a minute.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week, great deals on vet services from Bellicou. Bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. Bergbargains.com.
Sewickley Med Spa is proud to announce the availability of the revolutionary Tri-Polar Apollo treatment in Pittsburgh. As seen on Dr. Oz, Tri-Polar Apollo will reduce wrinkles, tighten and firm skin on your face, neck, abdomen, and thighs. This is a non-surgical, pain-free lunchtime procedure. Call today for a free consultation, 412-259-8628, or online at SewickleyMedSpa.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay, so while I was talking about this Wall Street Journal piece today, it occurred to me that I should share with you something from the Daily News blog, which I have referred to often on this program. This is the news aggregate blog put together by CMU history professor Jared Day, and it's just a wonderful compilation, and I do urge all of you to get on it. It's Daily News Nuggets, Daylee. I want to bring this up because of the Republicans' destructive tendencies. Let's put it that way. I think Chris Potter and I earlier this week were talking about the fact that really all that Republicans have going for them now is destructiveness or obstruction. But there's nothing that moves anything forward. Nothing. They simply stand opposed. And when they are moved in any way to do something that moves anything somewhere, they move it, I would argue, back, and they move it on their crazed sort of social issues, right? They move to deny voters access to the polls. They move to restrict women's ability to control their own bodies, their own lives. They move to cripple the supposed availability of a legal medical procedure, aka abortion. They move to prevent any effort on the part of the president to get his budget passed, to get a treaty passed, to get an immigration bill passed, to get anything. This is who they are. The party of destruction and obstruction. What's interesting about this is one of the realities that is starting to fracture the party itself. And in the Daily News Nuggets today, there is an interesting piece that's written by, when I see this name, I always say, Norm Ornstein, his name is. And he's a big mucky muck with the American Enterprise Institute Association? Can't even think. American Enterprise Institute, I believe. And believe me, that's not a liberal institute. And listen to what? This is a bona fide conservative Republican. Listen to what he writes. When Mike Lee pledges to try to shut down the government unless President Obama knuckles under and defunds Obamacare entirely, it is not news. It is par for the course for the take-no-prisoners extremist senator from Utah. And when the Senate Republicans' number 2 and number 3 leaders, John Cornyn and John Thune, sign on to the blackmail plan, it is news of the most depressing variety. Now, if I were reading that paragraph and somebody said to me, where do you think that paragraph, what publication was that paragraph in, or when, or who authored that, I would not say Norm Ornstein wrote it in the National Journal. But that's it. These are Republicans who read this, and that is just the opening salvo. And then Ornstein goes on to remind his readers that he ain't the only conservative Republican who has written about what he calls the Republicans' monomaniacal focus on sabotaging the implementation of Obamacare. And then he goes on to say that this effort is spinning out of control. I couldn't have written this any better. That Norm Ornstein and I are on the same page on this is mind-blowing. But he's on this page because he's fearful the Republican Party is heading for destruction. So bent on destruction are they that they don't even realize they're going to inflict that on themselves. So he goes on to say that what the Republicans are doing now is, I'm using his word, simply unprecedented. And he's talking about this effort to sabotage what was and is a law that was passed. And they lost. They were on the losing side. That law passed. But that never stops them. So, he says this. Imagine if Democrats, he's saying this to his fellow Republicans, imagine if Democrats had gone all out to block or disrupt the implementation, using filibusters to deny funding, sending threatening letters to companies or outside interests who mobilized to educate people that were going to be on the receiving. He's talking about Medicare Plan D. When Bush put that big effort through, the Democrats weren't thrilled about it, but they did not, he is saying. And what if they had? He says if they had, they certainly would have tarnished one of George W. Bush's signature achievements, causing Republicans major heartburn, and in the process hurting millions of Medicare recipients and their families. But instead, Democrats, Norm Ornstein points out, worked with Republicans and with Mark McClellan, the Bush administration official in charge of implementing Plan D, to smooth out the process and make it work. And Ornstein says it has been a smashing success. And then he says, look, contrast what the Democrats did with something there that they didn't like. And look at what we're doing with Obamacare. And then he just delineates it. For 3 years now, Republicans in the Senate refuse to confirm anybody to head the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Guerrilla efforts to cut off funding, dozens of votes to repeal, abusive comments by leaders, attempts to discourage states from participating in Medicaid expansion or crafting of the exchanges necessary, threatening letters to associations that might publicize the availability of insurance on exchanges. Wasn't there going to be an effort by the NFL or Major League Baseball or something to try to get the word out, and all hell broke loose and the Republicans threatened them and they pulled back? I can't remember which exact professional sports entity it was. And now a new set of threats the Republicans have to literally force a government shutdown or to refuse to raise the debt ceiling unless the president agrees to stop all implementation of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. What is going on now, says Norm Ornstein in the National Review. He says, what is going on now? Where does he say it? I lost my place. Oh. What is going on now to sabotage Obamacare is not treasonous. Interesting, he brings the word up. Is not treasonous, he says. It's just sharply beneath any reasonable standards of elected officials with the fiduciary responsibility of governing. I couldn't have written this myself. Norm Ornstein. I'm looking to see if the sky has turned to green. It's that weird to me. And he goes on, and he rips into Mitch McConnell and rips into John Cornyn. And he points out to his fellow destructive Republicans that when a law is enacted, the representatives who opposed it have some choices. They can try to repeal it, unless it becomes an effort at grandstanding so overdone that it detracts from their basic responsibilities of governing. They could try to amend it if the goal is to improve a cumbersome law to work better. They can strive to make sure that the law does the most for Americans it is intended to serve, including their own constituents, while doing the least damage they fear it will cause. Or they can step aside and leave the burden of implementation to those who supported it and got it enacted in the first place. But to do everything possible to undercut and destroy its implementation, which, Ornstein points out, means finding ways to deny health care coverage to many who lack health care coverage. That's what they're trying to do. It also means, he points out, what the Republicans are doing, that if they're successful, they will keep millions who might be able to get better and cheaper coverage totally in the dark about the fact that they now have options. What they are doing will create disruption for the healthcare providers who are trying to implement the law. It will also cause trouble for the insurers, the hospitals, the physicians. Ornstein goes on, and to threaten the even greater disruption of a government shutdown or a breach of the debt limit in order to blackmail, he uses the word, the president into abandoning the law, and to hope to benefit politically from all the resulting turmoil. He says it's contemptible. Norm Ornstein. American Enterprise Institute, National Review. And the sun will set in the east tonight. One expects this kind of behavior, Ornstein says, from a few grenade-throwing firebrands. But, as he says, when you have Speaker John Boehner motivated simply by fear of his own caucus, and you have McConnell and Cornyn motivated by fear of people to their right taking them on in primaries, he says this effort takes one's breath away. Norm Ornstein, ladies and gentlemen, that is beyond belief. So, I mean, when I sit here day after day yapping and screaming and tearing my hair out at the contemptible, and I think it was my sister who brought up the word traitorous. And here's Ornstein even flirting with it. Well, it is not traitorous, he says, but he's the fact that he even brought it up. This is a conservative Republican who clearly fears that his party is engaged in an act of suicide. And again, I want to point out that this article didn't happen in a vacuum. As he points out at the top of it, a number of respected Republican commentators who have not gone off the deep end and who also still have a core of true principle about what the job of governance is about. They're speaking up. But their party has been taken over by the loons. And these rational voices are not being heard. Jared Day has a piece in here from the Denver Post, which also supports this sense of the Republican Party spinning out of control. And it's about the trouble and dysfunction at the state party level. And obviously this in Colorado. But we see it here in Pennsylvania, where last week I was talking about the fact that Republicans here do not want Corbett to run for re-election. He's the titular head of the Republican Party here. He's the governor. And they don't support him. And there is an effort to take him down, to get him. That's Republican on Republican. And that's, too, what is driving this unbelievable, aggressive, lunatic right wing will eat their own, as they've shown many times. They'll eat their own until there's nothing left. Now, Professor Day, who puts this out, sometimes puts a little of his own thoughts into the compilation that he puts out every day. And this bears, I'm hoping, Jared, if you're out there, you'll call in, but because he often does, but I think he would have by now. Let me just read what he says, because I really think that we are witnessing something historic. And he's a historian, and he thinks we're witnessing something historic. He says, I've been arguing for some time that we are in the midst of a historic, big change political realignment, the kind that happens only once or twice in a lifetime. In American history, you can look to the 1810s, the 1850s, or the early 1930s to see a comparable moment when one party falls apart. Given the disproportionate influence conservative Republicans exercise right now in Congress and in state legislatures, he writes, I could understand some skepticism on my theory, since it looks like the Republicans do control half of the states. And they obviously control the House of Representatives. And they have enough power in the Senate to pretty much bollock that baby up, too. But as he says, we already know that the national Republican Party is fracturing into warring camps, and that extremists will not and are not ceding any ground whatsoever to those trying to pull the party back to a more pragmatic, rational course. And he points out that, obviously, because he reads all this stuff before he decides what he's going to put in, he says this confirms, this story from out of Colorado and the Denver Post confirms that the chaos that we see at the national level is now penetrating the state-level party organizations. And make no mistake, these state-level groups are the bone and muscle of the Republican Party. They do the heavy lifting when it comes to electing members of the House and the Senate and presidents. And while this internecine warfare that's going on may not affect the congressional races coming up in 2014 much, by 2016, look for the beginning of a real meltdown to begin to occur. In my dreams. In my dreams. Although, be careful what you wish for, Cullen, because others will say that if one of two major parties goes down, that does create a vacuum. And what arises in place of that party could be worse. Could be worse. Here's something I learned in my life. I remember as a younger person, even into my 30s, saying things like, well, it can't get any worse. I never say that anymore. Hello?
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 Is this Lynn?
Yes, it's Lynn.
Okay, I was confused by the delay. I was watching you on delay. I'm sorry. This is the thing. Why do you talk about perhaps the demise of the Republican Party? Yeah, only in my dreams as well. But they still have a control, like you said, in the House of Representatives. The congressmen will still get are there now. The Tea Party Republicans will probably still get reelected in the 2014 election.
Right.
And maybe in the future something will change, and I hope so too, because the country has no. Oh, gee, I get so depressed at what I see for the future of this country. I almost want to go live somewhere else, because this isn't the America that I remember, where we had a strong middle class, where people worked hard and made a good living and could put their kids through school, and the American dream is quickly dying. But yet people that are middle class, that do work hard for a living, are voting against their own self-interest. Why? Because in state houses and on conservative media, they put the blame not where the blame is. They put the blame for everything on things like the deficit and with poor people. We can't give these freeloaders food stamps. That's not the problem. The problem is that, and we could solve the deficit very easy, raise income taxes on people that make lots of money.
How about having corporations pay some tax?
Well, that too.
They don't.
What? They don't, right. They don't. But people buy into this, especially what you saw with the when the House said, well, we're going to keep food stamps out of the Farm Bill. And they come up with all these anecdotes about, oh, I see people that have food stamps that are driving $30,000 brand new cars, and they have, oh my, they even have widescreen TVs and microwave ovens. We can't give them food stamps.
Well, listen, they have succeeded in polluting public discourse to the point where it's pretty hard to change minds. It's amazing, and I don't know what. And then you have a whole, an entire complex, institutional complex, Fox News and cable TV and talk radio, that aim to misrepresent, misinform, mislead millions upon millions of Americans. I mean, we're not even on the same page ever anymore. And this is a recipe for disaster when it comes to moving government forward. I don't know what's going to happen. I hear you completely, and it's scary to watch. It is very unsettling and scary. They're harming our country. There's no doubt about it.
They're harming our country tremendously.
Right. I know.
You and I, Lynn, are in the same generation. And what happened? What happened to that American dream?
You know, they have no sense of a social contract. They have no sense that we are one nation, that there is a community here, that there are responsibilities for each other. They don't believe it. And it is because, and I've been reminded, I mean, this is Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged and all that craziness come to life. That's where, I mean, these are acolytes of that horribly every man for himself, survival of the fittest, government go away, and this is their sense of what our country should be, and it's crazy, and it's hurting it. I thank you for your call.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye. Ansel writes, to me, the definition of a terrorist organization is a group of individuals who act on their threats to bring down a government. It's an organization that uses fear to achieve their goals. It's an organization that will act to shut down a government if they don't get their way. The Republican Congress, led by Boehner, Ryan, Cantor, McConnell, to me, fit the definition of a terrorist organization. We'll take a break.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Paper is available now. Pick up one today for information on the Summer Beer Fest at Stage AE, plus Sugar Ray, Jam on Walnut, Smash Mouth, Summer Safari, Tribal Seeds, Gin Blossoms, and Oleander. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
Hey, Billy, want to go to the state fair?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Well, you see, Billy, when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have done with it. But now your parents are becoming energy efficient. They could save hundreds of dollars a year and take you to the fair next year.
I want to go now.
Oh, I know you do. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
So I don't know if this has already happened, but it's supposed to be happening now. This in Ohio, this plea deal with the guy in Cleveland who kidnapped and held those women captive for over a decade. And when I first saw that there was a plea deal in the works, I thought, why would you give a deal to this jerk? I mean, they've got him dead to rights. They've got they've got witnesses, the women. They have everything they need to put him away forever. But it turns out that this is a really good idea. And if he accepts their terms, which essentially boil down to, we won't kill you. We will put you in jail. You can tell he doesn't have a strong bargaining position, because if he takes the plea deal, what he gets is life in prison without hope of parole, plus 1,000 years after it, which always sort of tickles me, because, that's just putting the exclamation point on. And, of course, what this will do is mean that there doesn't have to be a trial. And no trial means that these 3 women and the little child who resulted from this crime will not be traumatized further by having their humiliation and terror and horror brought into the public realm. They will not have to testify. None of this will then be as public. And I must say, after the initial repulsive flurry of media trying to get at these women as they were freed, I have not seen any stories about any of them. And I'm hoping that what that means is, for once, that media have exercised a measure of compassionate control here. And this plea deal would be part and parcel of the same thing. Institutions actually functioning properly to spare these already horribly victimized women. So, I'm saying that, for all I know, it fell through. I don't know, but I think it was a done deal. This guy's got no bargaining power at all. If he wanted to be vindictive, he could force it to trial, right? If he wanted to just, but I can't imagine. You know how I sometimes rail against the parents of today, the overzealous parents, and their shepherding of their children through life to the point where the child is not ever put in a position where they can fail or where they can make mistakes. All the kinds of positions that you get into in life that you learn from. I can't stand these overprotective parents of today. And I came across this story in the New York Times I think last weekend, or not. Yeah, it was last weekend. And it's just a little silly item, but it pointed it all out again. It's about sending care packages to summer camp. Now, I don't know about you, but I went to summer camp once. There's no care package other than a one-way ticket out that I cared to get. I hated every minute of it. I begged my parents to let me come home. See, parents in that day wouldn't even consider such a plea. Tear-stained letters. Nah. Those were parents. That's when parents were parents. Don't coddle the little creep. Let her Let her be miserable for 8 weeks. It's a learning experience. And they never sent me a care package either. I was not aware there was ever such a thing as care packages. And when my kid went away, I didn't say, in colleges now, I get a letter from some group at his university when it's like about 3 weeks before finals, where they have all these finals packages to help your little darling get through finals week. And you can send them all kinds of candy and stuff like that. And first time I saw this, I thought, what? What? We're talking about, what? And then I worried that my son, his freshman year especially, in a dormitory, would notice that all the other little kids on the floor were getting Mommy and Daddy love you packages and wishing you all the best and you're me. And he wouldn't have one. And I thought, oh boy, and he'll think I don't love him or something. And so I did. I said to him, hey, I'm getting these things. I don't want to send this to you. He said, nah, it's stupid. So, we're on the same page. There was no problem there. But these parents, these kinds of parents that just can't leave their kids alone, ratchet it all up for all other parents who would never consider this kind of pampering nonsense. So apparently, the care packages that are being sent to campers at summer camps all over the country now are so ludicrously over the top that camps have forbidden them. I'm sorry, we have a policy now. You cannot send your child anything. And they have a mail room now where they go through. It's like, it makes the TSA look like nothing. It's like the KGB because parents are hollowing out books and putting Skittles inside. You cannot imagine what this article shows. And the reason the camps want to stop it is because these, again, parents who have no control and think that lavishing more and more and more and more on their child is an indication of their love, are creating problems and sort of caste systems within these camps. Says here, parents have turned to increasingly elaborate smuggling efforts, from hollowing out Harry Potter books to burrowing holes in tennis balls to get their little dumplings, M&Ms. And here's one of the camp counselors. They create such a distraction from the values we're trying to promote at camp. Now, at camp, what would those values be? I think self-reliance is one. The kid's away for the first time, maybe, and has to learn that he can or she can make it on her own and doesn't need mommy and daddy all the time. And these parents subvert it. There are parents are told to sign contracts in which they pledge that they will obey the rules, and then they go on and just totally ignore them. There are more. They're better than smuggling nail files into prison. Piece of cake for these parents today. Here's some of the techniques. Taping gum into the pages of magazines, stuffing chocolate bars into socks, and pulling Tampax out of their cylindrical wrappers and replacing them with candy. Oh, dear God in heaven. I hate these parents. I can't help it. I really do. I don't like you guys, if you're one of them. And we all know them. And they're filled with love for their children, but it's debilitating love. What the hell? How all these? You let your son walk to his friend's house? You let your son walk to school alone? You don't greet your son when he gets off the school bus? I'm surprised I was never reported to CYS. I'm serious. I don't know how any of these parents expect these kids to ever feel like they're capable themselves. Right? And finally, the final question, which I have here. What?
Just 1 minute.
I have one. Thank you. Thank you. Did you know that Katy Perry said that her marriage to Russell Brand, British comedian, Russell Brand ended when he texted her. Mm-hmm. Did you? That's how he ended the marriage? Mm-hmm. He texted her?
Mm-hmm. That's not right. I can't believe you did that. He's hot.
Well, you texted her. And what a coward. I mean, what a cowardly thing. It removes all effort to have any kind of a whatever. But with a jerk like that, I guess you would appreciate it because you'd want to talk to him. Anyway, they did some studies, and a lot of young people think that that's a perfectly reasonable way to use texting. I have to admit, I'm getting in, you can see how these are insidious. I know how phone calls become intrusions, but texts are not. Let me ask these two, I have two young women here. What would you guys both say is the longest acceptable response time to a text by someone you are dating or interested in dating? You text them, how long is a
day.
What?
Like you can wait a day.
A day? Okay. Sarah says a day.
A couple days.
You say a couple of days?
You have your own lives. It's like...
Okay, you have your own lives. Well, listen to this. Listen to this. You guys are not in the majority. This question was asked. This comes from JDate and ChristianMingle.com. This question was asked. 25% said 1 hour. And another 25% said 1 to 3 hours. That's 50%. Go ahead and take a call. 50%. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes. Hi.
Is this Lynn Cullen show?
Yes, it is. You're talking to Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
I just want to let you know I'm not one of those parents, but I did send my daughter a freshman package, but it included a box of condoms.
Oh!
In freshman year of college. Figuring she might be too embarrassed to go buy them herself.
Wow. Now that's a modern mom.
Just wanted to let you know. I know your show's almost over, so have a good day.
Thank you. Bye. No, guys, you're. I don't know what that means about you two. 1 in 4 say an hour is the longest acceptable response time to a text to someone you are dating or interested in. 1 of 10 expect a response instantly.
Mm-hmm. Now I do.
What do you mean now you do?
When Andy and I first got together, like...
Okay, but so now that you're
ago,
cohabitating?
It was okay.
Yeah.
Like, if he took like a day or two, because I knew we were both busy.
Okay, but you're cohabitating now.
But
what?
now,
yeah?
when I ask him a question, I want an answer right
Oh, see? This is what cohabitation does. She says, oh, I used to wait when we were dating for days. I mean, he had his life, I had mine. But now? I ask him, I want to know.
Right now.
Yeah. Now.
Now he gets an hour.
He gets an hour now. Because, you know why? Because now you landed him. Mm-hmm. See, this is it.
Now
this
I
is
can
it.
go say
If you, yeah, right.
It
Now,
also depends on the nature of the text. Like if you're talking about, hey, you want to get a cup of coffee? I don't know you.
right.
But if it's something,
No one can hear you.
I mean, if it's something like, hey,
This
you
is
wanna
Sarah.
Get a cup of coffee, then I want to be like, oh, okay, maybe, you can take a day to respond. But if it's something serious, like, hey, you want to go on a road trip, like, what? Or if it's something like, this hasn't happened to me, but if, like, someone proposes to you, then, like, obviously you're going to, like, the response time is going to be different.
Depending on the importance of the...
if you're going to say, I want a divorce on a text, obviously the response is going to be different. But, like...
and unprintable.
But if it's something like, let's go on a date, then... It's going to be different, the response time and the length.
And does it ever occur to anybody that every time you send a text, the person on the other line, on the other end of it, is not, waiting for, they're living a life. They might be in a meeting. They might actually have left, good God in heaven, their phone at home.
Yes.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah, it happens. So, I don't know. Anyway, strange new world we're living in. But the idea of somebody proposing by text...
I've seen that on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure. Oh, listen, I'm sure. Proposing, divorcing. Ay. Cowards. That's cowards. They can't even do it on the phone. Phone is too... It used to be, you wouldn't do something like that on the telephone. But now the telephone's too intimate.
Breaking up via text is okay.
Okay. Breaking up via text is okay. Leave me alone. All right, we are done. I am done. I am long done. I am overdone. I am ripe. So thanks today. And next week we'll just do it all over again. Have a great weekend.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.